Hello all, my name is Blake Brown and I want to welcome you to today's presentation. This month's webinar will provide an introduction and overview to the CrimeView Advanced Reporting application. The Advanced Reporting Module, or ARM, is a web-based application that allows users to report on and analyze their CAD and crime data. We'll begin the presentation with a review of the Advanced Reporting Module interface. Next, we'll discuss how to select data and filter data within the application. Finally, I'll log into the application and provide an overview of the reports available in the Advanced Reporting Module. Along the way, I'll provide some examples so that you can see the application in motion. This will also give me an opportunity to demonstrate some of the additional functionality within the ARM. Now let's review some of the components within the interface of the ARM. Near the top of the application, you'll see a series of tabs. Within each one of these tabs, you'll find one or more related reports. We'll step through these reports once we log into the application. On the left, towards the center, is the Attribute Selection tool. This is where users can make different attribute selections to filter the records they'd like to report on. On the left, towards the top, is the Current Selection window, which summarizes the attributes that have been filtered for this particular report. Some of these reports have additional parameters that can control their behavior. When present, these are available on the bottom left-hand side of the application. In the center of the application is the actual report, whether that be a table, chart, or graph. Directly above the reports, there is a temporal selection interface where you can make selections of the day of week, the hour, or select the actual date range that you're interested in reporting upon. Users can save different collections of attribute filters as bookmarks. These bookmarks are available in the top left-hand corner of the application. You can either select an existing bookmark or create a new bookmark. And at the top center, there's a drop-down interface to create a PDF of any of the reports that users have generated. And in the top right-hand corner, the Share Session button allows the ARM users to invite others in for a screen sharing session where they can filter attributes and participate in the creation of reports. Now let's discuss how users can filter records and make attribute selections. The most straightforward and traditional way of making attribute filters is in the Attribute Selection tool on the left-hand side. Here the users can click on the attributes they'd like to filter and select the specific values they'd like to report upon. Another way in which to filter records is to engage pre-existing bookmarks. This approach is particularly helpful for engaging attribute filters for reports that your agency generates frequently. Directly above the Attribute Selection tool is the Search tool. This allows you to search for values across all the attributes, including some attributes that are not represented in the Attribute Selection tool, such as the comments or the address. Directly above the Current Selection Summary window, you'll see the Clear, Back, and Forward button. The Clear button will remove all the attribute filters for the current report. The Back button will remove the most recent attribute filter that's been added for the report. And provided you've used the Back button, the Forward button will re-add that most recent attribute filter back into the report. When using the Attribute Selection tool, the values you select will turn green. After making an initial attribute selection, you may notice that the other attribute values turn either gray or white. Attributes in white are related to your current selection, whereas attributes in gray are unrelated to your current selection. I'll draw attention to this behavior during one of our examples. Now let's log into the application and take a look at the reports available within the Advanced Reporting module. We'll start by reviewing the 4 count-based reports available in the Offense Reports tab. Before we get started, it's worth noting that the currently selected tab will be highlighted in blue, and the currently selected report will be highlighted in red. Let's take a look at the first report available on the Offense Reports tab, the Offense Summary. The Offense Summary provides the most basic incident report, breaking crime counts out by crime category and type. At this point, we don't have any attributes selected. That can be seen in the Attribute Selection Summary window here. We have no entries. So at this point, we're looking at all crimes, all 139,000 crimes within this system. Let's go ahead and filter into violent crime for a particular district for the last 28 days. So I'll start by engaging the violent crime filter here within the attribute selection for crime type. Next, we'll click into the district values, and I'll select District 2. And I'll go ahead and engage the previous 28 days. And you can see we moved from 139,000 records down to the 34 violent offenses in the last 28 days within District 2. Now I'm going to click down on the Officer Attribute filter. So here we have that white-gray paradigm. All of the officers in white are related to violent crime in District 2 in the last 28 days. All the officers listed in gray have not been involved in any violent crime records in the last 28 days for District 2. Let's say you want to generate a PDF printout for this particular summary report. The center at the very top here, select Report. We'll go ahead and drop this down here, and this is the offense summary. And we'll zoom this out just a little easier to see here. And you can see that with a click of a button we can generate this PDF report here, either print this out or save it to disk. And we have both a report and a summary of our selection here. Now let's take a look at the second report we have available within the offense reports, the variable summary. The variable summary is a very flexible report that provides counts based on a single attribute or combination of two attributes. I'm going to start by clearing my selection here. Click the Clear button. And you can see my attribute selection summary window here has no entries. And let's go ahead and break out this activity, so crime type, and within each crime type break that out into the crime category. And I'll go ahead and put an attribute filter for property crime. And here we have all the property crime broken out by the particular crime category here, providing totals on the right-hand side for all the activity. Let's go ahead and break out this property crime by district for the previous month. I'm going to go ahead and select a date range, the previous month, and I want to toggle this from crime type to district. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the district selection here and just focus on the actual patrol districts here, 1 through 4. And there we are. We receive a count for all of the different property crime categories within each of the districts there for the previous month. Sometimes it's the case that you'll want to export this information out to Excel so that you can do additional calculations or incorporate these into your own agency's reports. To do so, at the top right-hand corner for all objects, whether they be tables, graphs, or charts, click the Excel button there. And click Open. Drag this over here. And you can see that it comes across with all the formatting as well. If you'd prefer to generate counts based on a single attribute, on the bottom left-hand side here, the reporting parameters, you can change from including that second attribute group there to excluding it. And you can see adjusted there. Took away the second attribute. Now we're breaking this down just based on the district. Now let's look at the offense details report. The offense details report provides the core what, where, when information for the incidents. So we have the crime description, the case number, shift, your date time, the address and the district, and your subtotals and totals. Additionally, this agency's had us configure their MO and evidence information to be toggleable. That can be engaged in the top right-hand corner. And the final report available within the Offense Reports tab is the Repeat Address Report. Since we haven't cleared our selection, this is showing us the repeat activity of property crime within any of the 4 districts for the previous month. If we click on any of these addresses, it will break that activity out based on the crime category. The Repeat Address Report also has a couple reporting parameters that govern its functionality. The minimum count of repeats can be changed, and the number of repeat addresses to be shown on the report can be altered as well. Next, let's jump to the Temporal Analysis tab. You can see that my selection from my previous tab is still selected. I'll go ahead and clear that out. Let's start with the temporal chart reports. The temporal chart reports provide 2 bar charts breaking out activity counts by hour of day and day of week. Let's go ahead and filter into some data and watch the charts react. We'll switch over to crime category, and let's look at the hourly distribution of commercial burglaries versus residential burglaries. We'll start with the commercial. See, heavily skewed towards the early morning hours, as we'd anticipate, and over to the residential burglary, and just as we'd anticipate, higher counts when people are away at work. Go ahead and click the back button and we'll get our commercial burglaries. And looks like our highest day is on Monday. Let's go ahead and engage just the Monday records. We can do that either by clicking here on Monday or up on the temporal filter here. And immediately you can see our hour of day chart adjusts here to give you the breakdown of the Monday commercial burglary by hour of day. The next report is the Temporal Grid, and this works best on large volumes of data. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out any attribute selections we have and head over to the Temporal Grids report. And what we have here is a breakdown by hour of day and day of week. In a sense, this combines the information present on the temporal charts into a single grid. The color of the individual grid cells correspond to the standard deviation from the mean for their values. And like everything else in the ARM, it's interactive, so as soon as we make a selection, we'll see the grid adjust. Let's go ahead and look at the temporal profile here for violent crime, and now property crime. Our next tab is the activity reports. The activity reports provide counts of activity at a yearly, monthly, or a weekly interval. In this report, the attributes by which the tables and charts quantify record counts can be changed by the user. So for an example, let's use this report to break out the variability of motor vehicle theft for each of the 4 districts in the last 52 weeks. I'm going to start by selecting weekly activity. I'm going to go ahead and select my activity here, crime category and motor vehicle theft. I want to limit this to just the core districts here, 1 through 4. And I'd like to see the last 52 weeks here. At the top, I have a table breaking down the count of motor vehicle theft per district, per week. And below that, we have a table showing, or a chart showing the same information there. With the click of a button here, we can combine categories. and it will collapse all of this information here from the 4 individual districts into a single value. This is a very useful report in teasing out the historical variability of different activity. Our next tab is the command summary. Command summary report provides a quick up or down visualization of agency priorities when comparing the current period to the previous period. To activate the command summary report, it's necessary to define an interval by selecting 1 or more weeks at the bottom left here. I'll go ahead and select the last 4 weeks. And after defining a study period, we immediately see these green or red tiles, sometimes white tiles if there's no change. Green is an indication that we've seen a decrease in activity from the previous period to the current period, and red is an indication that there's been an increase in activity. Right now we have a 28-day interval engaged here, and we're looking agency-wide. Let's step through each of the districts. Activity for District 1, activity for District 2, District 3, and District 4. As the name of this report hints, we envision command staff using this to just get a general sense of what's up and what's down where. And if you'd like to view the records behind these counts, click on any of the tiles to view the record details. Next, we have the Comstat tab. The Comstat report provides count comparisons comparing the currently selected interval to the previous interval and the same interval last year. Intervals can be 1 month or 1 or more weeks. In this report, users can select the attributes or fields by which to quantify record counts across. So let's define a study period. Go for the most recent 14 days. And I want to go ahead and break down property crime into the core districts 1 through 4. And at the top we have a table. We have counts for our current interval, a 14-day period. We have a count for the previous 14 days, a percent change, and then we account for the same period, the same 14-day period last year, and a percent change. And then we also get year-to-date totals for the 2018 compared to year-to-date for last year, and the percent changes there. So a lot of ways to quantify and analyze changes in counts from interval to interval. And at the bottom we have a chart of that same activity. In blue we have the current interval, red is the interval immediately prior, and green is the same interval from last year. Now let's look at the individual property crimes for each individual district. I'm going to switch this over to crime category, and we'll start with District 1. And here we have a breakout of all the counts of the different types of property crime. Existing interval, previous interval, same interval last year. And you can move through these here and get a better sense of the variability of this property crime activity. Next tab is the Unmatched Records tab. This report simply alerts users to records that did not geocode within the dashboard. That's all this is used for. So far, all the reports we've reviewed today are designed to work off the incident reports, the actual crime reports. All the remaining tabs in red or maroon on the right here are designed to work with the calls for service data. So the reports within the calls for service reports tab, the calls for service temporal analysis, the calls for service command summary, and the calls for service Comstat function pretty much identically to the offense-oriented reports. So on the calls for service reports, we have a summary, the variable summary, where you can quantify across one or more attributes, the calls for service details, and the repeat address reports. The temporal analysis. We have our hour of day and day of week, just as we did on the offense side of things. We also have our temporal grids. We gain a response time temporal grid for the calls for service. The calls for service data for this particular application is also tied with response times. The calls for service command summary operates just as the offense report does for the command summary. Define a study period, and obviously the priorities that you monitor on the calls for service tend to be a little different than the actual crimes, and so these are the things that are being monitored here for the command summary. And finally, the Comstat, both weekly and monthly clips. Once you define a study period, you have that same flexibility of quantifying across any of these attributes here. So if you'd like to quantify activity by zone, it's a click away. We do have one report tab that's unique for calls for service. That's the calls for service response times. Clear our selection here. The first report, the calls for service response time report, is similar to the variable summary, except you're quantifying or averaging the response times across one or more attributes. This report has some parameters that control its functionality. You can set what constitutes the minimum response time or maximum response time to handle outliers, and you can toggle between reporting the average, the mean, or a percentile. At this point it's set for 90th percentile, but you do have some options to deviate away from the 90th percentile. Let's go ahead and look at a breakdown of response priority by call type, and we'll do that for year to date. Year to date, and I'd like to break this down based on the priority and the call category. So here are our priority lights and siren responses and a breakdown of the different call categories. And here we have the process time, the stack time, the response time. I'm going to go ahead and toggle over to 90th percentile. And we can see the table adjust immediately there. And so these are our 66, almost 67,000 high priority responses year to date. Now let's filter into just the robberies. And we'll switch over to the response charts, and we'll click separate categories. Right now we're breaking down the response times of these robberies based on their priority. Let's break these down based on district. Only interested in the core districts, so I'll filter just into 1 through 4. And we might as well filter into just high priority responses, priority 1. And here we have the variability in response time for robberies within all 4 districts here. We have district 1 in blue, 2 in red, 3 in green, and 4 in yellow. And we can actually toggle this, so this is a breakdown based on the hour of the day, how long the response times are taking. We can actually toggle this to day of week, get a sense of the variability in response times Monday through Sunday. And we could also look at this based on the month or by the week. At any point we can click combine categories, and at this point this is among all 4 districts there, averaged out or combined. And so you can see this is a very flexible, powerful report for analyzing response times. And our final report here is the Statistical Briefing. The Statistical Briefing tab provides counts and count comparisons for all your data layers at annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, or custom time intervals. Similar to the Comstat reports, the Statistical Briefing reports compare the counts of the current interval to the count of the previous interval and the count of the same interval last year. The Statistical Briefing reports are the only reports where you can interact with data layers other than your crime reports and your calls for service. You can see we can work with the arrests, the field interviews, the citations, and the collisions, in addition to the CAD and the crime data. And let's go ahead and use the Statistical Briefing report here to generate counts for last month's activity. So I'm going to go ahead and click Monthly. And it selects the last complete month there, May. We have the ability to remove this subcategory. Normally it quantifies activity across the category and subcategory. Remove subcategory. And we'll start with just the crime. Here's a violent property and other crime, all crime. And here we have a breakdown of May crime. Move on to calls for service. And we have our comparisons, current month, previous month, and same month last year. Step through the citations. There's our totals and the categories. Collisions, categories and totals. Field interviews. And arrests. And to conclude things, let's go ahead and create a bookmark of our current selection so we can return to these records in the future. Top left-hand corner, we have the star with the plus. We'll go ahead and give the bookmark a name here. May 2018. Arrests. We're going to check the top box here, share bookmarks with other users. That way other ARM users will have access to this bookmark. Engage this selection, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we've created a bookmark for this particular selection that can be visited in the future. So hopefully this introduction and overview of the CrimeView Advanced Reporting module has been helpful and informative.